yes.
We'll take that as a yes.
We'll take that as a yes. So I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and we will continue with our agenda. Next, we have our, we have persons to be heard.
Excuse me, Mayor. Can council discuss a little water treatment?
Why don't we what if we did that under the, when we discuss the financing options? Would that be okay? I just want to find out if anybody, persons to be heard is here, so we can get them talking, and then we can, and maybe right after that, we can come back. Would that be okay?
That's fine. I mean, it's
Okay.
unfortunate that most people left, but hopefully they can tune in.
Sure. Let's see, we have,
First three for water, so just.
okay, the first three are water, and then we have Helmut Ulrich. You have, why don't you come to the podium and speak? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Helmut Ulrich, and I live 1675 Chateau Way. And the reason I'm here today is I built a home about 6 years ago or so out on Highway 15 and 92. And I built my home a little too close to the neighbor's border. And so I asked the neighbor if he would sell me a third of an acre in front of my house. And he was willing to do so. And I'm asking the council whether that is gonna be approved.
We'll find out. It's on the
Okay,
agenda.
I think it's on the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So
Okay, thank
stick
you.
around. So now we'll go back to Mr. Vanderlinde's request.
There was a few things brought up, and I just want to make some clarifications on how we came up with the cost. I mean, basically, Bolton Mink had came up with cost estimates, and if anybody is familiar with construction, cost estimates can vary depending upon engineering firms. They came up with a cost estimate that did increase. Normally, when you get a cost estimate that comes in over budget, you tend to go back and reassess, relook at possibly tweaking it. Unfortunately, we never did that, which kind of surprised me. We just got a bid or a cost estimate from a different engineering firm on a totally different system, and we just took that and ran with it. Unfortunately, these systems are not really comparing apples for apples. They will do what we need, and that's a good thing. The only problem with it is when you start looking at maintenance. We were told by both engineering firms, both WSB and Bolton Mink, that steel tanks will last roughly 20 to 25 years. Both engineering firms told us that. They said a concrete tank will last roughly 40 to 50 years, which is probably true because St. Bonifacius, our neighbor, replaced they have a steel tank. They replaced it after 14 years. They didn't quite get to 20 years. So I just want people to understand where the cost difference is. Yes, it will be cheaper up front, but we will pay for this in the long run. Also, one of the things that was kind of a big deal to me was the PFA money, public finance money. Basically in December, it was at 1%. To get 1% money on the open market is impossible. Right now,
That's part of the discussion later.
I know,
so,
but
yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
get, so people understand where the decision was coming from to go with a possible. There was other issues we had looked at, a different routing that came up late in the process that I think we could have looked at, that we didn't, that would have adjusted the price. The problem when you go from basically 1% money to 3% money, you're going to add around $2.5 million in interest over the 20 years of that project. You start adding that on top of it, and you've got a system that doesn't last you as long. In the end, this is going to cost the city some money, you know.
But Mr. Vanderlinde, I'm going to interrupt you here because you know why? We discussed this and all of those points that you're making at length, in detail, numerous times, and all the points that you're making, we've already discussed, and we've already addressed those. So, I
Right.
mean, I understand what you're saying, But, I mean, the length or the duration or the time that the facilities are going to be good, we discussed that. We discussed the steel versus the concrete. We know that they're about, that a lot of what you're saying isn't the information that we received. You're talking of 1% versus 3%. That's not exactly accurate either, but we're going to be discussing that later, the financing of it. And we need to move forward, and to just sit here and go over and over and over and over things and not moving forward is not a good thing for the residents. So a decision was made, and we're moving forward.
Right, and I agree with you. And
Yeah.
like I say, I know this is not going to change anything, but obviously what I heard here tonight, people did not understand what was happening. They still don't. They didn't get the message about what we're really ending up with, and I want to make sure people understand that.
I think they're going to end up with a very equally quality facility as the centralized. And if staff didn't believe that, they wouldn't have recommended it. And we're looking at the same, we're looking at 2030 for the centralized system versus the decentralized system. But there was a $7 to $8 million delta. We could not make that up, regardless of how much you tweaked it.
You don't know that. We
our
never
staff-
looked into it. We never explored.
Our staff told us as much, and you cannot tell me that by changing the piping still would have been 12 miles of piping. Whether you go through the North and South Saunders, you still would have had 12 miles of piping. So yes, as our staff said, you could reduce the cost maybe by $1 million, but overall, you still had a delta of over $6 million. So-
I don't
I know you
believe
disagree.
that.
I know
Right.
you
And
don't.
that's fine. We're
That's
just going
fine.
to agree to disagree on it. So
Okay.
I'm fine. I just wanted to,
I understand.
state my statement again one more
Right.
time so people, hopefully more people understand what we're going to end up with.
Okay.
So-
So then, so now we're going to move on to our consent agenda, and that consists of approve our regular meeting minutes from March 2nd and approving a resolution approving the claims. One comment I would like to make, in the minutes for the March 2nd regular meeting, and we only have regular meeting minutes because we did not have a work session, it states that Wayland made the motion to pass the resolution to approve I'm sorry, I have to go to my notes here. It's getting late. Under wellhead protection, it would be bottom of page 4. I did not make that motion. Ms. Thole made that motion. So it was for resolution approving the wellhead protection plan for WSB, and Ms. Thole made that motion. With that,
We'll correct that,
Okay.
Mayor.
any other changes? Otherwise, a motion to approve those two consent agenda items is in order.
I've got a question on the claims.
Okay?
Page 4, I had talked to Mr. Barone today about it. Excuse me, page 12, under WSB, there is a expenditure for building permit reviews for $2,900 and some odd dollars. Do you know what that was? Did you ever find out?
Yep, I asked both Mr. Hornby and Mr. Grimm. I'm going to let Mr. Grimm take it first, but if you want to go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Brony and Madam Mayor and Council. So that's the activity, and David probably could explain even a little more as far as that's the work that they need to do on the as-built and any type of site inspections that that they need to do also. And we had a high number of permits come in January, and basically in front of that sprinkler change or the
Building code change.
the building code change for the, I don't know,
Fire
if you- David, you
suppression.
can probably explain a little better, but yeah.
Yeah, so each new home building permit, we collect a fee up front from the applicant that submits the home to cover that time, that review time. For the initial grade, they review it with consistency of the approved grading plan, and then they'll also, when a foundation's done, they'll have typically there's not a review, but if there's issues, they might have a review, and then there's a final grading plan that they'll review. Is this exceeding what, is
It's-
typically reimbursable, so is this exceeding it?
Well, yeah,
Is
because
that
it's,
what the-
yeah, collected, we have charge fee for the permit, and then we also did have to charge on, I think one of the permits, Angie said on Valley Drive, we had to
Yep,
charge an
more.
additional fee based on some additional site work out there, so that's what we pretty much,
The fee is generally covered by the applicant. It's a $250 per permit on each building permit
Yeah.
that comes in. So when they pay for their permit, that's an additional charge that gets added to help
Yeah.
cover
Okay.
that time in review.
So it is a pass-through, it wasn't.
Oh,
it wasn't-
asterisk,
it-
okay.
It wasn't marked as a pass-through cost.
Okay.
Plus, I guess what I was
Yeah.
trying to clarify.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other
It's
thing,
typically a pass-through.
and the other thing, Mr. Vanderlinde, I had Mr. Grimm kind of look at previous months, and this shows up pretty much every time.
It just ebbs
Sometimes
and
as low
flows,
as
doesn't
900 to 1,500, sometimes as high as 4,500, kind of if you look back within the last year. Just all depends on the activity level. So we had this fire suppression code changed, and people rushed in here, not only here, but other cities, kind of
Try and get under the.
get in under the
Get
gun.
under
That's
the
exactly
gun.
what they did, so.
So normally it'd be done by our inspection department.
No, WSB routinely does this work for us, this kind of stuff. So this is, again, part, as Mr.
Okay.
Grimm and Mr. Abel were talking about, this is a pass-through, so they're charged in the front, and those are the dollars we use to pay WSB to do that.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just have one other question. Regarding the cell phones,
Yeah.
how often do you look at the contracts? Like, do we go back every year and just revisit the cost? And I just got a new phone, and I was amazed how I could save just by walking in and then renewing it. And
Sure.
so I'm just curious, do we go back like?
We've used Verizon because we get the best coverage with Verizon out here. I've had the same agent now. They tend to earn their stripes and move their way up, but I've had the same guy for, I want to say 3 years now since I've been here. And generally, when I ask him to look at rates, he'll do it and he'll show me, but we're not seeing a lot of significant cost savings, especially on a phone like yours. It's pretty minimal. We also have shared minutes, so we have some high-end users, low-end users here, but those all get shared. So we rarely, if ever, exceed the minute plans on the cell phone. So I wouldn't say it's a big expense, but we certainly could look. But I would ask him to kind of, we would just be changing maybe phone types versus vendors.
Right. And sometimes it's not even changing vendors.
Right.
It's just changing your plan because they're updating
Yeah.
constantly.
Yep, and we
Technology
get
is
we get a plan
crazy.
that's kind of geared for government employees. So, and Verizon does that. I'm not sure all carriers do that, but I know Verizon does that. So
Okay.
Any other questions?
they have a whole separate unit for it. So when we call for service or issues, we call their government representatives. We don't call their general representatives. They have a whole fleet of people. I think they're in Baltimore or in Alabama or someplace. So
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items of our regular minutes from our March 2nd meeting with that change, and then approving our claims as presented.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, Mr. Christian seconded that?
Second it.
Yeah, we had a tie. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Next, we have our public hearings. And this is regarding Mr. Helmut Ulrich. Okay, he has a simple subdivision.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm just trying to get the overhead to wake up here and show you the actual lot line adjustment as Mr. Ulrich alluded to earlier, but this is what we call a simple subdivision. Two property owners are wishing to exchange what is 0.3 acres of land. You can see the area in the middle there, the property to Ulrich, that's the 0.3 acres where the lot line adjustment will be taking place right here. Taking an opportunity, I believe one of the property owners is going to put the house up for sale, so wanting to take this opportunity while the two neighbors know each other to take advantage of that. It does fall under the simple subdivision process, which in this case is two resolutions before you this evening for consideration. One being the actual simple subdivision to adjust that lot line. The second then to vacate the existing drainage and utility easements, hence the requirement of the public hearing that you're holding tonight. Since the lot line is moving, we need to vacate those old drainage and utility easements, and then we'll be taking new drainage and utility easements over that new line when it gets adjusted pending the approval of the city council this evening. Simple subdivisions do not require planning commission recommendation. They do go straight to city council. The public hearing, again, requirement is simply for the vacation of those drainage and utility easements. If those easements weren't there, we would not have to do the public hearing, but we do want to clean that up while we're doing this item. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the simple subdivision along with the easement vacation. They do fall within the minimum 10-acre zoning district, the agricultural district, as part of this request. So staff is recommending approval. There are 2 resolutions before you this evening.
Okay. Any questions? It's pretty simple. As you said, a simple subdivision. Is Mr. Ulrich is here? Is Miss anybody? Sheehan?
No.
Okay, all right. Any?
I talked to him last night.
Okay. Any questions? Do we need legal to weigh in, I mean, on anything?
No, I was just reminding everyone that we do need to have a public hearing with regard
That's
to the
right.
vacation.
Yes, okay. All right. Thank you.
You look poised
Yeah, I
to
look
do
poised.
both.
Thank you. All right, so this is a public hearing because it is a simple subdivision. So I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. Anybody that wishes to speak for or against or have any kind of comments or questions regarding this simple subdivision, you will have the opportunity at this time. Is there anybody? I don't think so. All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing and we will take it back to the council. Council, what is your wish? Like I said, simple subdivision, pretty easy.
I'll make a motion to approve the simple subdivision.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the simple subdivision for a lot line adjustment between 1675 Chateau Way and the Sheehan property. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Do we have to, do you want to do,
Yes, please.
okay, so then you have a simple subdivision approving the easement vacation for the public drainage and utility easements between lots 2 and 3, Block 1, Whaletail Woods, as Mr. Abel had pointed out.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
You second it?
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the easement vacation for the public drainage and utility easements. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. And that concludes your business item, so,
Tomorrow, the attorney is gonna, your city attorney
okay,
is gonna take care of all the easement.
right. Okay, I think so.
And then we-
Ron, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So next, we have business items. First off is approving a conditional offer of employment for Adam Hagholtz as Public Works Maintenance Worker.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a recommendation by the Personnel Committee to approve a conditional offer of employment for Mr. Adam Hedgeholtz to be our next Public Works Maintenance Worker with the city. The process in the background section is described for you. We ended up with 15 applicants. We interviewed 8 in our screening interviews in late January. February, we had finalists, and then there's a process where we go by driver's license check, criminal history, all that stuff is done by the Minnetrista police. And then there's also a pre-employment protocol that includes physical exam, audiogram, vision test. And so we're at that stage in the process, and we hope to have Mr. Hedgeholtz join us shortly. Just a little bit about him. He's currently works at Southwest Transit. He's been there for about 6.5 years as their lead facility maintenance worker. He also has 7.5 years experience as a heavy equipment operator working for the Minnesota National Guard. He spent 1 tour of duty in Afghanistan for a year, and so he comes highly recommended. And so we're looking for your approval to hire Mr. Hedgeholtz.
Council, any questions? We desperately need another Public Works. We're short, as you know. And Then I'm looking for a motion to approve the conditional offer of employment for Adam Hedgeholz as a Public Works maintenance worker as presented in your packet with the information that staff presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Next, another one, we have approving a conditional offer of employment for Jessica Archer as our building official.
Yes, again, thank you, Mayor and Council. This process was one that we just completed. We're asking the council to approve the Personnel Committee recommendation to hire Ms. Jessica Archer as our new building official. Our process began with an application period that closed in late January, January 30th. We had 11 applicants. They're all, other than a couple where there were some really good applicants for this position. Instead of just luck of the draw, deciding who to keep and who not to keep for interviews, we decided to interview all 9 people that we left into the process. We ended up with 2 finalists, Ms. Archer and one other candidate, and by far Ms. Archer stood out at the conclusion of both rounds of interviews as our top candidate. A little bit about her, she's a certified building official. She's been so since 2008. She's got, I would say, 7 years total experience working for either the city of Edina or the city of Plymouth, working in building inspections and plan reviewer. She's got an AA degree from Anoka Tech in architectural drafting, is just completing her bachelor's degree from Crookston in business management. And I think she's going to be a tremendous asset to our staff here, and we're looking forward to hiring her. So with that, I'll hopefully stand for a motion to approve a conditional offer for Ms. Archer.
Any questions?
No. Mike, will she be headquartered out of here physically?
Absolutely. Yes.
So if someone was to come in to get a permit for whether it be new home construction or whether it be just for repair, would that be something that a lot of other cities do? You can walk in with a check and get your permit and leave the same time?
I believe that's the case. I sure hope so here. Now, having kind of I won't say a one-man band, but one-person band here, her responsibilities are going to require her to be in the office and also outside of the office doing inspections. So it's not going to be an 8.5 hour
In the
coverage
office
in
here,
the
because she'll be
office,
in
but
inspections.
Well, I'm sure once we get her here and get her situated, we'll probably end up having some sort of posted where she'll be in the office from 8 till 10 or 10:30, and then most of the rest of the day will maybe be out in the field, kind of depending
Okay.
what time of year it is.
I guess the thing I was most concerned about is like roof replacements,
Sure.
decks, smaller things. Not, I understand you got a plan review if you got a
Right.
home you're gonna build, but
Right.
on things that, more simple repair type things that you can come in and leave.
Yep, we hope to do that,
Okay.
Councilmember, yeah.
Thank you.
I guess my question is more financial. I think if I remember right, weren't we budgeting or allowing about 85,000 for this?
Well, the range that we advertised began at $34 per hour, which is a 70,000 or whatever it says in her. And so,
Right.
based on her experience, we were looking for somebody who had experience. We had some that had experience, not a true, been in the building official position. I mean, she's licensed official, but she hasn't served as an official. But this is a pay increase for her, so I think I'm very comfortable offering this. I think I know she's going to accept this. So
Okay. I was just, will 85, if you're at about a $70,000 salary, you put benefits on there, you're gonna need a vehicle, you're gonna
and we
need,
have one, I believe, to use. It's an
We
old
do- we
one,
do.
but yeah.
Okay.
But I think we're going to try to.
so we're still
I
at
think we
85,
are.
we should be close.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So the city will provide her with a pickup or a truck that will have a ladder
Well, I
rack
think
that she can carry a
eventually
ladder.
I think eventually it'd be a newer vehicle, but right now we're just going to use something we have in our fleet. It's old. I told the candidates that. I said it's got 4 doors and an engine to run, so I mean, it may not be the prettiest vehicle, but it
Well,
works.
that's all right. I guess
Yeah.
the important thing is that in dealing with hundreds of permits throughout, and having to get involved with certain things, it's important that it is somebody who can actually make sure that like roofing is done with kick-out flashings and ice and snow shield and those kinds of things, which
Mhm.
physically mean you have to kind of get up there with the ladder and look at it.
Right.
And-
And not
and,
have fear of heights.
Pardon?
Not have fear of heights.
Yeah, but I think the main thing is that she will be equipped with that, and that is something I'm assuming the city will provide her with,
I'm not sure if we're
that
gonna
type of
equip her with a
equipment.
ladder, but I know we're gonna, I mean, if she's at a construction site there, I would assume there are ladders there for her to use, be my guess. We're not gonna outfit a truck with a ladder, scaffolding, or anything like that,
Okay,
so.
and I'm assuming if she's coming from Edina, she's had enough of these where she's had to do these, so,
Oh, yeah,
before, so.
yeah, she's had plenty of experience.
Well, that's the important part, having
Right.
the vehicle to,
Yep, and
That'll
we've
be
got
helpful.
that, and we're gonna try to budget one for
okay, thank
some
you.
better vehicle.
And just kind of, I didn't know this either, but found out through this process, there's a difference between a building official and a building inspector. And so she's actually a building official. She'll be a building official. She can do inspections, but she can do more than that. So that's a plus for us. Plus, if down the road, we know that we need another person on
Right.
board, then we can get a building inspector on board.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so, good, good questions. Any others? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve a conditional offer of employment for Jessica Archer as presented in your packet.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional offer to Jessica Hartman.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
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 All those opposed, motion passes. And next, Mr. Barone, the building inspection reciprocal services.
I'm gonna deflect that one to Mr. Abel and to Mr. Beatty possibly. It's kind of good timing now that we're gonna get our building official hired, and David can speak about the reciprocal services agreement that you have in your packet.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. As we were analyzing hiring our first full-time building official, as you just did, concerns and questions were raised about what would happen if this one sole person were to go on a vacation, or heaven forbid an extended leave of medical type issue would come up. How would we continue on with customer service and keep plan review moving forward? We ran into a situation with that when we shared with Victoria last summer, and didn't want to go through that again. In the context of that conversation, the reciprocal service agreement idea was raised. Council seemed very interested. Staff reached out to the staff of Victoria. They were very interested in it as well, and that's what we've brought to you this evening. With the help of Mr. Beatty, we've drafted the actual agreement, which is attached in your packet this evening. City staff of Victoria received this very well. They're acceptable to it and plan on bringing it to their council on March 23rd. They're very excited and happy about it as well. It is reciprocal, so if they need help, they'll call upon us, and vice versa. We need help, we can call upon them. And certainly there's going to be logistical things that the two BOs will have to work out, our office staff will have to work out about contacting one another, but the idea here is the customer service flow will not be halted, if you will, just because someone is out on vacation, or if someone gets backed up with inspections and they can't keep up. The big development that we're dealing with, Woodland Cove, is very close to Victoria. They're very familiar with it. Mattamy is building in Victoria, so the two BOs will know that builder very well. There certainly might be opportunities to even help out with inspections. If the plate is looking very full, we could reach out and say, hey, can you do a few inspections in Woodland Cove this week, and vice versa. So we think this is a good agreement that could be beneficial for both cities. It does list out an hourly rate, $60 per hour. There is some mileage that will be included with that. If there is potential for overtime, it does lay that out as well. But all fees, the normal routine of building permits, the fees that gets paid to the city will be paid here. The permit will be submitted here. It will be issued here. None of that will change. This is really going to be something that will be behind the scenes that likely the customers will never even know until that building official or inspector shows up to do the inspection and realizes it's not Jessica, it might be Tom from Victoria. So that's the way we intend on setting it up. They look at approving this on the 23rd, and staff is recommending approval. There's a resolution that is approving the building inspection reciprocal service agreement with the City of Victoria. I should also mention I have placed phone calls to one other city. I reached out to Orono to see if they're interested. Timing might not be the best because they are right now in the process of hiring a new building official. So I'm waiting to hear back, but certainly looking not to be exclusive just with Victoria and having different standbys set up to make sure that service will never be affected when it comes to building inspections or plan review.
Okay, so in other words, Victoria doesn't have exclusivity for
They do not.
our as our backup. We could go elsewhere if we
Correct.
need to, okay.
And I don't know the current status, but I believe that Victoria currently has something similar set up with Belle Plaine right now. So they also have multiple checkpoints
Okay.
set up.
So you're looking to maybe get the same situation or same setup with Orono once
Correct.
they're up and running and you've talked to them and.
Well, I've placed a phone call. I haven't heard back from them
Okay.
yet, but reaching out not only Orono, we might Shorewood, we might neighboring communities
Okay.
is what I'm looking for, just to see if there's interest in this.
All right, okay. Questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion
I will
to,
make a motion to approve the agreement between the City of Minnetrista and the City of Victoria for building inspections reciprocal services.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Approving, let's see, approving professional services for program development and implementation of the city's MS4 general permit. I believe that's Mr. Hornby.
Or David.
I'll
Or-
start,
okay.
Madam Mayor, members of council. This is regarding our MS4 general permit that is administered through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. The new permit requirements became law in August of 2013. And essentially what the PCA did was did a reissuance and an update of the general permit, and every city that has one of these permits needed to update that, which we did and had approved in March of 2014. So what this item is doing is now implementing that new MS4 permit. We have new guidelines, new recording requirements, procedures. We'll likely have to change some of our ordinances. We're gonna have to do some ordinance amendments under this new general permit. And the scope of services that you have provided here is what WSB has laid out, a 7-task approach, if you will, to fulfill our requirement of the MS4 permit. We, just so you know, we do on an annual basis have to submit and report to the MMPCA, so there is an annual expense that WSB has provided for us. This is, it's usually in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. The proposal before you this evening is a price not to exceed of $17,600, and it is a bit higher because of those 7 tasks with this new permit requirement. There is more to it this year than there is generally because they reissued the permit and they essentially came up with more requirements. We have more documentation that we have to do and more work in order to bring up what Public Works staff and the city in general does for its MS4. With that, I did come across a short 3-minute video here that I'll put on the screen that somewhat covers what this all means. What is an MS4 permit? What element is coming? What the
Do you need to
Pollution
dim
Control
the light?
Agency is looking at. There we go.
Oh, didn't the lights say?
I'm sorry, bear with me here. I muted that.
The state has some water quality standards that we've set to help us determine, what the right level of chloride, can be in the water bodies. That's 230 milligrams per liter, which is about 1 teaspoon in 5 gallons of water. So you can imagine it doesn't take very much chloride to contaminate our lakes and streams. And in the metro area, our primary source roads for the public, but protecting our water resources from being contaminated from road salt. It's a very unique and challenging project for us to undertake. So for homeowners, that means putting less salt down, getting out and shoveling right as the storm comes so that you don't have the buildup of ice. For cities, counties, and the state, that means maybe switching to a wet solution of chloride that sticks to the road and doesn't bounce off into the sides, which you can use less salt and you can use it more effectively, stays on the road, prevents that ice from bonding. For the cities and counties, it really saves them a lot of money because they're not having to put as much product down. So there are a lot of ways that we all together can kind of reduce the impacts. If our groundwater begins to get contaminated with chloride, that becomes an issue as well, where it would be costly to have to treat all of our drinking water to remove the road salt. By working with the other MnDOT, other state agencies, the cities, the counties, and other local partners to come up with a plan and what can we all do together to reduce our impacts, to make sure that we're able to still provide safe roads, but also maintain healthy conditions for the fish and bugs living in our lakes and streams.
So Madam Mayor and Council, like I said, a brief kind of outline as to what the MNPCA is dealing with and what they're trying to do with these requirements, and goes to then what we have to do in public works and from the city standpoint with putting that road salt down, street sweeping. We have to report that, our stormwater ponds, testing them, taking samples, maintaining them. All of those record of activities are required per the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and kind of we've talked a lot about water tonight, but this is another area of water, obviously, that ultimately could one day have effect on the groundwater. So that is why the MNPCA has the rules and requirements. So that's what the scope of what WSB has outlined tonight. I don't know if Paul, if you have anything else to add to the process that your water resource person plans on going through. But that is what, in a nutshell, the PCA is doing.
Just the thing to add is that this program, this is what this does is we've written the permit. So what this does is implement the permit. So now we're rewriting ordinances, we're rewriting your program, and then we'll follow this program as far as a procedural process through the remainder of the permit, which goes through 2019. And then it'll be reissued. It's a cycle we're going to continue to go through. Every time we go through this cycle, there's going to be more restrictions. In addition to the road salt, we're also looking at erosion control, total suspended solids, and those kind of things that get downstream of construction sites, come off of our roads from other pollutants, heavy metals, those kind of things. Covers that. What it does is it covers the documentation and writing the program for that. There are things that come on that you have to do as you do annually, as far as Public Works doing the inspections. Eventually we'd like to have done, I'm sure Public Works would too, is come up with a consistent set of worksheets so that your Public Works staff can quickly and easily go through their inspections, mark them off, and document them. One of the things the MPCA does do is they will audit the city, and they will notify you in advance. There's a lot of work involved in going through an audit. Audit lasts a day or more. I've only been involved with one that lasted a full day. And the documentation, the best thing you can do is make sure your documentation is in order. So this sets the parameters for that through your maintenance program. Following this, you're going to make sure your Public Works staff keep that documentation up to order. Jesse Carlson, I think you may have met, at least some of you may have met him last year. He's the person who runs our program for Minnetrista, and then he would be involved with Public Works, also in training and those types of things to make sure they're following the documentation procedures.
Just out of curiosity, do any of our Public Works people attend the road salt symposium There's,
I don't know
they,
if Gary has
okay.
done that. I know Gary is going through some other training now.
It might
But I
be
don't know if they've been.
worthwhile, because it's a pretty good symposium. I know they hold a couple. I know one was in St. Cloud, I think, and then there's usually one here locally. But if you haven't attended it, just think about it. I think it's like $140. Good thing to do. So, put on by the Freshwater Society, I might add. Anyway, okay, any other comments by staff, information, questions by council?
I was just curious about the same thing you just brought up as far as, do the public works people attend training to stay up on the current issues, or do we rely more on WSB? Do we get that information from both places?
It comes from several different avenues. We get stuff certainly directly from the PCA about the requirements, but as part of this, each year there is an element of training that is provided by WSB. They do also have free trainings that I know Gary and Mike Pollock have attended from time to time. So yes, they do attend trainings every year for this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think this is a big issue with Gary Peters, because I know when he was at Eden Prairie, that was what he was in charge of, putting together a program that actually monitored the amount of salt in every truck and where it got put.
Yep.
So he's very upfront on this
Yeah.
issue.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things, Council and Mr. Vanderlyn, we haven't got to yet here in our city, but the video talked about putting down the liquid salt. You really save a lot of
save a
salt
lot.
because it's stuck to the road. You don't have to worry about penetrating all that ice and snow. You just let it sit on top, the cars roll over, and it comes off a lot easier, so you end up spreading a lot less salt. We haven't got there. I know Eden Prairie had done that, and that's what he was talking about, and Mr. Vanderlyn was talking about. They know exactly how much salt they drop on, and they pre-wet that saline solution. So.
Yeah, it's a lot less.
Yeah, but it's a lot less salt, but
More.
to do that,
Yeah.
it costs money to do, so hopefully in the next year or so, we'll be looking at something like that to treat all the city roads in advance of snowstorms, so we use less salt.
Do you need a different type of truck?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the other issue.
And the thing though is if we're doing the right thing now, we're actually going to save money in the long run, because once those water bodies get impaired,
Right.
it costs a whole lot more to clean them up, which you're mandated to do, than it is to try and keep them clean in the first place. So, yeah, but
So I think
okay.
they're trying to keep that in mind as they purchase vehicles, so they could be potentially set up for putting this kind of system on the back of them, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, usually it's just incorporated. You see that on a lot of county trucks. They've got tanks
Yep.
Right.
that sit on the sides. So they still use salt in the back, but they've got the tanks
Yeah.
in.
Right.
So they're kind of a multi-purpose unit.
It's all computerized. So.
Is the liquid salt versus the granular salt, is one harder or less hard on the roads, on the pavement?
I don't think so.
No.
I think it's just more of a ecological.
Actually,
thing.
maybe the liquid would be less because you're using less salt,
Right,
so it might be less.
because they'll measure how much salt you need to put down.
Right.
So.
Okay.
One other question I had. Now, this has come up before. Have we gotten another price on this, on doing this? I mean, some of this stuff, I think we should really start trying to get some prices on this stuff. I know we've run into an issue in the past, and I just want to make sure that we're getting what we're paid for, what we're paying for.
Sometimes, if you have to write up a whole RFP and put it out for requests, just, it can add more to the cost too, and then you find out, oh, well, there is no cost savings,
Well,
so,
but
yeah.
sometimes there is. I mean,
Right.
the Gillespie property, there was a huge savings. I mean, so, like I say,
Right.
it's public money, we're in charge of it. I think we need to make sure from time to time that we're getting what we're paying for.
And I agree completely. I think when we're talking larger amounts, then it is worth going out. What I would be concerned about is spending staff time and money putting together an RFP and then getting results back that are going to be about the same, maybe more, maybe a few thousand less, and then we spent a few thousand, you know what I'm saying? So I fully agree. I think when we're doing something a little bit larger, we definitely need to take another,
Well, And
different
sometimes
approach.
you don't have to go out for RFPs. I mean,
Right.
it's a pretty common practice in the construction industry is you get quotes from people, when you're bidding projects. They're not a firm bid, but you get you can get a quote from them, say, this is what we're doing. And I'm assuming this is a very common, I mean, all cities have to do it. So I'm sure if you call up pretty much ABC Engineering, you're saying, this is what I need, they're gonna give you a ballpark figure of where they're at.
Mhm.
Like I say, just, I think we need to be accountable for what the money that we're
Sure.
spending.
Is the general threshold for an RFP 50,000, or what is the threshold?
I think RFP is 100,000 if I remember.
I mean, this is
correctly.
different. I mean, professional
This is-
services,
yeah,
there's
professional
no,
services,
so if you're
so-
going out for some contractual type thing, like
We don't have
For a-
to,
a project or something where you're
if it's
I
contract.
think
Or
what you're
do some-
thinking of is bids for projects. 100,000 is the
For bids.
threshold for needing to get bids as opposed to something else. But as Mr. Grimm is saying, professional services are not subject to that requirement, so that you're not required to do that at all.
Is there a setup for documenting right now, with other cities already doing it? Do they have like, what, a checklist or something to make it easier for our guys to start doing this?
Part of what we do is we do this for our communities and within areas. For instance, I'm also the engineer for another city that's nearby. We could combine efforts, and we do that so we can bring pricing down. So Jesse, who put this proposal together, he handles the other city as well. He
Okay.
handles their training, their administrative support. If they want, another city may want us to do the inspection, he'll line up the inspection, do those kind of things as well. It all depends on what level of service you want out of it. But what we try to do is group cities together in certain areas, and we take care of all of them and try to bring the cost down for everybody.
So if you had to make a educated guess here, if we were to go out separately to another source that maybe doesn't have that other city here under their belt, what kind of price would we be looking at?
I can't tell you that.
Okay.
I work for one firm. We have specialists to do this work. This is what they're telling me it takes to do that work.
Is there a cost savings because you kind of know the city, you know some of the infrastructure,
Well, we're your city engineers,
Right.
and we do know the city. Even if there's some things, I've been here for about a year, even there's some things I don't know about the city yet, but others in my firm do.
Right.
And so those specialists that get involved to help assist me and help you advance your city or progress your projects. That's part of the advantage of being, having a consultant city engineer. You don't just have me, you have 300 other people in my company that can come out and assist you with whatever specialty item you have.
Okay.
So this is one of them, and Jesse does this for a number of communities in this area.
Okay.
So he does it himself within WSB, he doesn't, you're not utilizing an outside firm?
Correct.
It's
This is a
in-house,
service that's
it's
in-house. This is, yeah.
You have a whole water department, if you will, engineers.
We have erosion control and
Yeah.
MS4 specialists. Jesse is one of those.
Okay,
We
I
have a
see.
whole group just dedicated to this.
Okay. Staff, any comments? You're recommending?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess the only thing I would add is there's certain things that certainly I can see where that might make sense. The Gillespie property, not something that someone needs to know knowledge of our city about. MS4 permit, WSB's done it the whole time I've been here. They have knowledge of it, they keep the records of it. I would have to get all those records to all the firms that you'd want me to seek quotes from, and that would take time, and they'd have to have time to analyze that. If that's something you guys want to do, you need to develop a policy on when we're supposed to go get quotes and when we're not. They're our hired engineering firm, our consulting firm that we pay to keep on staff, and that's who I look to give us that information. So if we are going in a different direction, we need to know that.
Like I said, I think when you're talking larger amounts of money, then not to say that we shouldn't be kind cognizant of this amount, but I think when you're talking larger amounts, sometimes, and I know this from past experience, you kind of spin your wheels to save a nickel, you know, and then you end up actually spending more because you've spent so much staff time on trying to get a better price. So I think we should just go with staff's recommendation and move on this. We are under a time frame as well. Any comments?
You know, I kind of agree with Mark. I mean, on a point, I mean, kind of in between here and you know, looking at like several of the projects that have taken place in the past. That's why I was kind of curious to know if this was done in-house or what it would be. But we owe it to obviously try to find the best price that we can, but I also understand the time that would take. So I appreciate your comment, Mark. I think that was
Well,
Right.
and I'm not, right, and I understand. I mean, time is time, and I'm just saying that I think maybe we should revisit something because there is no limit on professional services.
Sure.
That's kind of a scary deal. I mean, it can be a little money, it can be a lot of money. So
And maybe we should have that discussion, you know, at a council meeting in
Yeah.
terms of what we want to do in the future and maybe a policy in place, how we want to handle that. So, good point. So.
No, and I appreciate that because, you know, well, I have a saying, you think hiring a professional is expensive, wait till you find out how much it costs to hire an amateur.
There you go.
It's true.
And I think, too, we know what we're going to get with WSB. They are our engineering firm. If it does take extra hours that they weren't planning on, it's not going to cost us more because this is a firm, not-to-exceed price, and they're going to get the job done. So, with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the professional services for the program development and implementation of the city's MS4 general permitting.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Seconded not to exceed 17,600.
Okay, is that okay with the first? With the
Fine.
motion maker? Okay, so a motion has been made not to exceed 17,600. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. So next, we'll move on to our water treatment of financing, the financing options for our water treatment facilities.
Correct. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. And I'll be brief, and I'll turn it over to Jessica Cook from Ellers is here. And this packet item is on pages.
Thank you for waiting.
Yeah. Yes.
Long night.
51 through 54 of the packet. Pages 51 and 52 are the memo I put together, and I'll, like I said, I'll maybe turn it over to Jessica first, and I'll probably have her just focus on options 1 and 2, because I think options 3 and 4 that were listed in your packet are more options, but one that we wouldn't really recommend spending a whole lot of time exploring, because they're more for rural communities. It talks about hardships and things, and I don't think Minnetrista probably is going to qualify for any rural water hardship programs based on our, some of the demographics, just income levels, our valuation of properties, et cetera. So, and then also number 5, on page 54, I think we've talked about briefly special assessments, but I think the council is in pretty good consensus as far as not wanting to go down that route. So I think I'll have Jessica come up and mainly talk about options 1 or 2 listed there, and then I'll chime in probably afterwards or even as she's speaking if there's anything I want to add in, and then we'll take council question comments. So.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. There really are probably 2 primary choices for financing the water treatment plant. The one is to issue bonds. We would recommend to do that competitively because with the city's AA+ rating, there's no reason you couldn't attract a number of bids on your bonds. In that scenario, you have the freedom to structure the bonds to meet your projected income flow. So by that I mean you don't necessarily have to have a equal principal payments each year. If you, for example, some of the comments that came up tonight talked about, well, is growth going to help pay for this? What some cities have done is they've escalated their principal payments over time so that as growth occurs, the new users help pay for more of the principal. There's risks in doing that, so it would be something to discuss, but that's an example of the kinds of flexibility that one would have if you're issuing your own bonds, going out to the market competitively.
And that would be a GO bond?
That would be a
Okay.
GO bond.
Okay.
A second example of that kind of flexibility has to do with call provisions. If these bonds were 20 to 25 years in term, the call date would probably be at about 8 years. So unlike a mortgage, municipal bonds are not callable at any time. The people that buy the bonds want to make sure that they're going to get the interest rate you're promising them for a certain number of years. And for a longer term bond, like 20 to 25 years, it would be an 8-year call most likely. And so after 8 years, then you would have the option of refunding those bonds if interest rates were lower, or refunding those bonds to restructure them if you needed, if your income was coming in differently and you needed to restructure your principal payments. The third advantage of the competitive sale is timing. It takes about 2 months from when we get the go-ahead from staff to start planning a sale to sell the bonds, and then another month to get the money. So from when we start to having money in the bank, it's about a 3-month process. So are there, should I give some more background? I'm not sure. I know you're a new council, and if you want me to step back a minute and give some more background on bonds and what we do at Ellers, I'm happy to do that.
I think we're good,
Okay.
unless I should ask, anybody want more information? No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think that was good on number one there. I think, I think we'd be looking at probably a 20-year bond. I think you referenced a 20 to 25, and then I think you estimated right now the interest rates are right around 3% or 2.95, I think is what Todd had in the memo here. But obviously the market moves and stuff a little bit,
Right.
so.
Is that the rate you're actually seeing now?
That is for AA plus community.
Okay.
So we're at pretty historically low rates right now.
The longer the bond, the less interest, or the shorter the bond, the lower the interest
The
rate?
longer the term on the bond, the higher
Higher
the
interest.
interest
Yeah,
rate.
okay.
Right.
Say, can I get a question here, Brian, to you?
Sure.
Recently, within the last 6 months, we refinanced the police department, which saved us about $500,000 plus over the term of the bond.
Yes, we
And I
do.
recall that going through Wells Fargo at 1.9%. Is this something that we could do about the same way, or is that a different kind of bond?
Well, I think that I was going to bring that up later. I mean, that's one of the benefits of, we'll talk about the PFA in a little bit, but one of the benefits of doing just a regular GO bond, like over a 20-year period with an 8-year call or something, is you're able to have that flexibility to, if rates are for some reason different or whatever, to call and capture savings or prepay some payments. I mean, we did that on the police facility. We also refunded this year the Maple Crest Street project, as well as a different water bond we had for probably, I think it was one of our wells or something. But I mean, that is, yeah, so I think something similar would be available.
It could be available and do something similar, because that was really a big deal. I mean, you take
Correct.
over $500,000 over the term of the loan just for the
Yep,
police department
yep.
alone. I mean,
Well,
the
it
public
was
works
more than
department
that.
or whatever.
It was public works.
Yeah,
and-
Yeah,
public
in
works,
yep,
police
yeah.
department.
For the
Wasn't just
facilities,
police,
yes.
But facilities or whatever you want to
Right.
call it, but still, it was a lot of money. It was over $500,000, and I recall, like I said, that was at 1.9% through Wells Fargo. That was huge.
Okay, yep.
Right, if I remember, it was a $1.9 million bond, and I think when we redid it, it went to $5 million.
Yeah, it was just shy of, that or whatever, yep, so, correct. But, yeah, so that is something that, we could look at in the future with this type of financing method listed here. So, I don't know if anyone has any other questions. Otherwise, I don't know if you want to talk about just the logistics of the PFA drinking one.
So, well, a couple
Or-
questions.
sure.
So, real quick, so you're saying that you can structure it so that the principal payment is less at the beginning, but then more towards the end when you have more users. So kind of like, okay, so you're paying, but is the interest, do you pay more interest on a loan like that then?
You will, because the way a bond works, you're paying interest for every maturity.
Right, okay, so,
And so you're gonna have larger maturities in the later years,
okay,
so that will affect your overall interest rate.
okay, okay.
So, yeah.
PFA program, as I think you're familiar with, is a state program that is offered to communities that are facing big infrastructure projects like this city is. And the process for getting a PFA loan is an annual application process. There's a two-stage application. The first point of that is coming, they're both coming up this spring, but there's a May 1 deadline to the Minnesota Department of Health to get onto the project priority list. And then subsequent to that, there's another June 5th deadline to get onto the PFA, the Public Facilities Authority's intended use plan. So I think one of the questions is, will the new engineer, and there's a certain amount of engineering information that needs to be in these applications. So if the new engineer is hired in early April, as I saw from the PowerPoint earlier, they'll have to work fast to do that. It's not a complicated application, but it would assume that they study up on what the work that's been done and that they can pull that off. Once you get the applications and hit those spring deadlines, you don't really know if you get on the list until the fall.
September. Yep, correct, September.
September
Yep.
if you're lucky,
Yep, yep,
right.
yep.
And then you apply the following March again, by the following March for that financing itself. So you'd be looking at an initial application this spring. For your soonest you'd probably get your money would be a year from now, and potentially next summer. So it's a longer process. The advantage, of course, of going through the PFA is that depending on your need and how you score, and your median income of your community and the burden of your rate increases, so all of these factors go into the soup, they write down the interest rate.
Yep.
And so you do get a lower interest rate.
Yep, and if I can just jump in, I think earlier the spread was noted maybe closer to 2%. I think it's closer to 1% or 1.25% maybe. So the interest savings potentially would be, $1 million, $1.5 million, not $2.5 million over a life of a 20 years. So I think some of those communities that you're referencing that are in real dire straits where they're violating the primary drinking standards, they really need this. They don't have the ability to pay. It's a lot of lower valued property community, whatever you want to call it. They would get the spread that was maybe where they could get closer to like the 1% rate now, or 1.25%, where we would be closer to 2%, under.
Oh, so they don't give the same rate for every community, they give the rate depending on
Sort
a
of
lot of factors in your
some
community.
need and stuff,
Median
yeah.
household income, market value of properties, well, we would score very well, and then we score
So it's
pretty
still a
high.
spread. It's whether it's a percent or
Right.
1.2 or something,
Right.
but it.
Okay.
And again, I'm all for lower interest,
Right.
rates and stuff. I mean, obviously I'm the finance guy, but I know Jessica hasn't gotten to yet either. I think
Okay.
what Mr. Christians was asking, what either isn't an option with this type of financing to call it in 8 years. You're locked in for 20 years at that rate, whether rates for some reason in 8 years are at 1% for some reason or whatever. You're at whatever rate you're at. So.
So if you go the way you're locked in, I mean, that's it.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep.
Position.
I think they're giving that little bit of a benefit, but then I think they want probably the equal interest, or to count on it or whatever.
Well, they're issuing bonds.
Yeah, so they need to
And
pay.
So they'll issue, 100 million in bonds, and then they'll give you a $10 million piece of that. And they need your payments not to fluctuate because they're passing them back through
Right.
their bondholders.
And then also, through the PFA, do they finance it 100%? So if you have a project, it's 100% financed, or do they only finance 80 or 90% or whatever?
They finance the portion of the project that addresses the criteria that makes you qualify. So that means that if a portion of the project is related to growth and not towards correcting deficiencies in the water or addressing supply issues, they will not finance that part of the project.
So if we need to put in a water tower or extra storage tanks for firefighting issues or for pressure, they may not cover that cost.
That's correct.
So then we'd have to get financing or
Secondary.
figure out how to pay for that in addition to the facilities.
Right.
Okay.
The other issue I see is, at this point, we don't really know how much we're gonna need. And that's where your point that you just brought up
Yeah.
is down the road, if you have to add a power, you have to add something for whatever reason, rules and regulations, we don't really know what we do. What do we do? Pick a number out of the air and say, we think we're gonna need this
Well,
much,
and I
how do
think
you-
that-
well, how do you do that?
I don't think that's as big a deal, because I think even last time around when we got on the list and we qualified with our 5 points, you know, or whatever, we had an estimate, I think, of 18 million, I think is what Bolton and Mink plugged in. So, I mean, obviously, until you get to the final design and stuff, you don't have it totally pinned down. So I think the Department of Health for those May 1st and June 5th deadlines are looking for your best, what you know as of now, and that's the number that you go with, or, you know.
Well, we had kind of before, once had it like, yeah, you said what, 18 million we had kind of approved before, was
Yeah.
approved before?
Correct, yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
there
the
was a
thing
deadline on
that concerns me, though, is the fact that if we have to put in additional wells because of growth, we have to put in an additional water tower because of growth and because of water pressure and fire needs, then this loan isn't gonna cover that. So then we're gonna have to take out another loan. But the other thing is, kind of on that same vein, Mr. Christians, is if we do this project right now, and then let's say 15 years from now, our growth is far more than what we expected or estimated, then we have to put in another plant. We could take that loan, if it's not a PFA loan, and we could restructure it and
Sure,
kind
yeah.
of combine them, if you will, with any new loan. Whereas the PFA, we would still be stuck with that with the same payment. That's my issue, is that 20 years same payment, whether we grow or not, or whether the interest rates get better or not. That's my only
Yeah.
concern.
Well, that was new to me as far as the PFA loans. I guess that was from 2013 was a new thing, that it wasn't callable. So I guess that to me, that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a game changer, at least factors in as far as not having the flexibility to call that.
Right, but if you're down in that 1.5 to 1%,
It's,
you're
yeah.
not gonna ever call it. I mean, it wouldn't pay to refinance it. I mean,
No,
normally, they say
right.
at least 2 points is trigger to refinance, roughly, right? And somewhere in that,
It's usually not that much. I think the reason being callable would be important in addition to savings, because you're right, it would be hard to achieve savings.
Right.
Converting a PFA loan to a market rate loan would be the example of when the engineers design the system, they're gonna estimate more growth than what we've estimated in our rate study. Because they're being conservative, they wanna make sure they have enough capacity. We're being conservative, we wanna make sure we have enough revenue. If growth happens within the capacity of the plant, but more than we thought in the rate study, there wouldn't be any opportunity to prepay a portion of the debt, which would lower the interest rate. So if you got a whole bunch of connection fees in, for example, and so you had a pot of $200,000 or $300,000 in your water fund, if you had a callable bond, you could prepay that. Conversely, if growth didn't happen and you found you needed to stretch out the amortization schedule in order to ease the rate costs on
Right,
people,
that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
you would not be able to do that with a PFA loan. So those are the kind of the two structuring considerations that being callable is helpful.
Mhm.
but if you were gonna end up with like you say, a big pot of money, I mean, you can adjust that according to your rate cycle. You know, if you end up with too much money, adjust your rates. We've got to adjust our rates every year anyway. So you know, to me, it would make more sense to adjust your rates, you know, to make sure that you're not drawing more out of your residents than you have to.
Ideally, you do both, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. The PFA loan, there is a sort of a blended option, which is the city can issue temporary bonds for up to a 3-year period. And then those bonds can be taken out by either some permanent financing by issuing GO bonds competitively, or through a successful PFA application. And something like that would give the city the time to see if a PFA, see how you'd rank on a PFA application, see if you'd be competitive and get on the intended use plan, which is the first indication of success. The downside of that is then you have 2 costs of issuance. because you're issuing
Right.
bonds twice. So, none of these solutions are perfect. But that is something that if you want to proceed faster than the PFA loan
Yeah.
allows, but keep that option open, that's something that can be done.
Because the PFA funds wouldn't be available till basically summer of 16, so if we need the money in fall, we'd at least have to do a 1-year temporary financing or something, and then hope to get PFA funds. If I'm understanding this right, get the PFA funds for 2016, hope that rates probably haven't crept up a little bit, or, whether it's in that 1 to 3 year period so that it still made sense to even do it, and then hope you still come out okay and have interest savings, which,
Right,
Yeah, I mean,
that's correct.
you can apply for the PFA and.
If you don't use it,
if-
you don't
if-
use it.
Right, if you get to the point where you figure we need the funding now, then you go to a GEO bond. If we don't, you stay with the PFA and see how we
So-
come out.
Mhm.
The only thing I don't understand is when you said about adding, say, future growth, wells, towers, stuff like that. I mean, with a GEO bond, they're not gonna, you're gonna have to sell another bond for growth, right? You can't just add it onto that bond, or can you?
Because the components of your current project that are attributable to growth rather than to correcting deficiencies in the water. So if part of the project, and I don't know enough about the decentralized plant option, but if there are components of that project such as the elevated, the storage tank, whether it's elevated
If we did
or
it with this
underground.
project,
Yeah.
right. Mhm.
Right.
like
Yeah.
the well 6 and 7, and whether
Yeah.
those would be eligible or not, I guess that's what we'd have to find out.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, because in the original plan, there was no storage tank until later on.
Correct.
I mean, that wasn't part of the project. It
And
was
we
never-
don't have to do that now either. We
Well, I
could do
know,
it later
but
on,
I'm-
but,
Right, what I'm saying though is if you, if you don't do it now, you just can't add it to the bond later. Okay, we're not gonna put
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
We'd
Well,
probably do some supplementary
Right,
financing, is what you're saying. yeah, yeah.
We build what we need right now, say, like you say, 13 million. Well, 5 years down the road, we borrow 13 million. 5 years down the road, we decide to put a tower in, or a underground storage. And actually Victoria's bidding one out right now, and an under 750,000 underground storage tank, they're estimating right now is about $2.5 million. So if we need $2.5 million in 5 years, can we just add it to that bond, or we need to go out for another bond, right?
Yeah.
It would be a discrete bond issue.
Right, so if we had a PFA loan for the initial phase of this project, and 5 years down the road, we decided we need a tower, we can either do that with PFA or just go out for a general obligation bond at that time.
Right.
So we'd have two separate loans on the same basic
Mhm.
system.
and like Ryan said, what you could do is you could double track it, you could apply for the PFA loan, and then not to stop the, so you don't have to stop your forward progress with the facilities, and then you can do a interim bond. But I'd like to see the numbers on all of this before, we're talking these things, but I'd like to see some
Right,
actual
and
numbers.
we, back in December, we were talking about PFA money as being like 1%.
I don't think I was quoted as that. I think that was
Well,
Seth Peterson with Bolton and Mink, and
well-
I never verified that,
Well,
so.
somebody
so-
did, so you kind of take that and then you look at,
Yeah.
okay, 1% versus
I know when I talked with-
2.95.
Yeah, Todd
You know,
Todd
and-
referenced more
you know,
closer to 2%, so
Right.
maybe it was somewhere in the middle, but.
Right, and
I-
2% of
I-
13 million is, you're right in that $2.5 million.
I think I ran, it was closer to 1.5, 1.5, 1.7.
Well, I ran it and I had somebody
Right.
else run it, and we came up with about the same number,
Okay.
but
Well,
whatever.
I think
It's
we'd
a
have to
big
see
number,
some
whatever it
numbers,
is.
but my question is, what is staff looking for tonight?
Well, I
Is
think
this
the
just
reason
informational?
staff brought this tonight is, I think, the RFP, the engineer hopefully selected April 6th. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the memo, and May 1st is the deadline to get that, is it the project priority list in to make sure we're on the 2016 list. So if we need to, if the council's direction is to at least have that for sure as a backup plan or whatever, at least to double track it, we wanted the consensus or direction to incorporate that so Mr. Hornby can, even tell as these RFPs come in, make sure you fill out that 5-page application by May 1st, or if you're selected, or.
Does
Yeah.
it cost a lot? Would there be a big cost in terms of applying for the PFA funding? And/or if we apply, we're not obligated to take it? Because I just don't want to derail this thing or put it, or make it longer than necessary.
We're not obligated to take it, because you can see we're on the list for 2015, and we're going to be, not using the money
Right,
based on
okay.
the timelines and stuff. So I guess I'll answer that question. And then to my thought, I think I've seen the application. It's not super long or anything. I think to just do the application can't be a whole lot of money. I guess I'll defer to Paul.
I don't know the process for it specifically. There are other people in my office who would do that, or in this case, that would have that knowledge to explain that to you. I don't.
It should be
have the
pretty minimal, at
specifics
least
of it.
in my.
We already have a lot of information based on cost opinions for the water system. And we could use that information to move that forward. I would like to have the consultant we bring on board do that work, so that it's also consistent in their process moving forward.
I mean, it seems to me it makes logical sense that you would dual track it and you would apply for the PFA money. And then if you get it, then you can then decide, how you want to proceed from there. Maybe a short-term interim bond, depending on the costs and all of that. So you're not delaying the project, but then you could eventually take advantage of the lower interest rates. I mean, but I think we have to weigh all of this, but I'd really like to see numbers. I'm sorry, I'm a numbers person. I have to see these numbers.
We should be able to come up with a pretty easy number, because obviously we paid Bolton Mink to do it the first time. So
Yeah.
it should be pretty, we
No,
should
I'm
have an
s-
invoice
oh, I-
for see, they applied for this already.
Oh, I'm not saying the cost to apply. I'm
I
saying
think you're
I'd
more
like
talking
to.
the interim financing
I
type.
was talking, what is it going to cost to do an interim financing? What's the rate on that? What would the payments be?
Yeah.
Then if we did get the PFA, what would the cost of that be? How does that work? I mean,
Sure.
just give us all that
Yeah.
information.
So-
Because I think, and then we have to decide, do we want a prepayable bond, or do we want to go the 20 years? Without seeing those numbers, I would have a hard time making a decision.
I think the goal for tonight was just to at least give the options, get it in front of you, and then get direction. If you wanted to at least dual track it, then we know that's the imperative deadline is the May 1st.
Okay.
I think we have to. I mean, even if you're talking $1.5 million,
Mhm.
that's a lot of money. I
Well,
mean,
that's,
so to fill that out, and
Oh, yeah,
send an
that's right.
application in,
Right.
if we don't do that,
That's what I'm
then
saying.
that's,
I don't think
we
the
have to do
application
that.
would be that, yeah.
Right,
Right.
I mean,
So,
that, and
I think that's what we're looking for tonight.
you don't
Okay.
know when this project, not everything goes the way you want all the time. We may not need the money until that time. We don't know that at this point. Normally, I think we're setting a pretty high goal. Hopefully we can do it, but to get this project started in the ground yet this year.
We're
I
going to
don't-
do it. Come on, Mark, positive
Well,
thinking. Come
unfortunately,
on.
This is part of my business. Normally a project from this type of deal, from hiring an engineering firm, you're talking 6 months
Well,
to get a final design, get everything bid.
Sure,
We're
I'm-
ready
yeah.
basically almost into April.
Yeah.
You tack 6 months onto there, it doesn't leave much left of 15.
You're right.
I mean,
It doesn't, but
right.
we're going to,
We're gonna do
we're
everything
going
we
to do it,
possibly
right?
can.
We're
I
going to
told-
do what we can.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do
All right.
everything we possibly can, but
So,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
there's a possibility we might not need the money that quick.
So,
I have a
what you,
quick question. In your statement here, under market rate GOV bonds by competitive sales, it states here that the cost of issuance are similar, regardless of what bond it is. What kind of cost is there of issuance? A ballpark. I'm not gonna hold you to it. Just give me a ballpark for cost of issuance.
I would say 50 to 75,000.
Regardless.
It depends
On
on the
which one you
size.
go.
Depends very much on the size of the bond issue. So some of the costs are fixed, such as your rating fee.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is because I'm also looking at this 3-year short term, which you have a 1%. So if we're paying $50,000 to $75,000 to do a 3-year short-term loan, that you're getting 1% on, and no longer is 1%.
well, and that's why I said, I think we need the numbers. We need to find out what is the cost for issuance, what would it cost for reissuance, what is the interest rate for 3 years, you know what I'm saying? We need to see all those numbers. And this isn't giving us all that, but I think what staff is looking for tonight, as a direction, do we want to at least do a dual tracking, because we have these other options still, do a dual tracking of PFA loan, so apply for that, make sure we get in there for the May 1 deadline. In between time, we can be looking at these numbers a little closer, and then we can decide on what route we want to go, providing that, yes, we get the PFA funding, but the first step is apply for the PFA funding, dual track it.
Right. And to take off on what Bob said too, I mean, if you applied for the funding, you get the funding, you know it's there, but you're 6 months short. You don't need to issue a bond for 13 million. You don't need all the money for 6 months.
Right. Well,
you need a very small
we'll have to
portion of
see,
that.
right.
So, right, there's a
Right.
lot to figure in this thing,
Yeah.
but yes, we have to apply for the PFA money.
And I think the information here is really good, because one, now we know PFA funding is not callable, which might be an issue. And not callable necessarily because of the interest rates, but just you may want to roll it over into a new structure if you have needs down the road. So these are things to consider, but the first step is to do the PFA application and get going on that, do a dual track, and then let's look at these numbers a little closer and get them all down, so.
So the staff is recommending the GO bonds. What's your thought about going the other route?
No, I think we'll need at least some sort of GO bond, whether it's a temporary financing. That's where in that last paragraph, I did that hybrid option would be the temporary. So I think what we're looking at is probably more the hybrid, applying for the PFA, knowing we might need to do some sort of temporary financing to bridge the gap, and then we'll run some more numbers and go from there. So does that make sense? I mean, we're going to have some sort of short-term GO financing, most likely. So we'd recommend that, but we also would recommend applying for the PFA.
Okay. Well, the important thing is to get it done and get it done before May 1st, so we get on track here.
Exactly.
So we're not losing time.
Yep.
So let's not waste more time.
At
Do
what
it.
point does the interest rate lock in on that long-term process? Does it lock in May?
No, it
No.
would lock in a year from now, or
That's-
whenever the loan is.
So there's
actually funded.
variables there too. So
Mhm.
we're given the best, with the data we're dealing with right now. So
I guess in terms of process and timing, what I would recommend is that we wait till the engineer is on board and they have their arms around the project, they meet that May 1 deadline. And then we have some information, some real tangible information about the project to discuss with the PFA. And then we can get better feedback from them about, will you fund all of this project, will you fund a portion of the project, et cetera. And when we have that information, then it makes sense to bring some actual bond runs and show you some
Okay,
cost comparisons in the
Yes.
table that are easily understood.
okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're going for the May 1st PFA application.
yes.
All right. Do you need anything? Do you need a motion or something from council, or just direction?
Oh gosh, maybe motion. Let's memorialize this here, right?
All right. So I need a motion from council, or I need a motion to direct staff to apply for the PFA funding with a deadline of May 1st. Is that kind of putting it?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
to meet the appropriate
To meet the
deadlines, which the
appropriate
first one's May
deadlines.
1st. Yep.
So moved.
Okay. Is there-
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further questions? I know the motion was rather vague, but I think you have good direct, you understand. Okay, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And I just want to make it clear and for the record, this is not to say that we're going to postpone the project. We're just looking at all of our financing options. The project will not be postponed. Thank you. All right. With that, we have one more item, master planning for our city parks.
Table.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at 10:30. Do we want to talk about this now, or would we like to add this to our work session at our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move the master planning for city parks to our next work session, which would be work session on April 6th. With that, we're into our reports. I'm going to be quite brief, and I did have an opportunity to meet with the Gillespie, now my mind is blank. Lady from the Gillespie Center, we had a very nice meeting, and they will be coming probably the second meeting in April under special presentations, and we can be talking with them a little more in depth on some of their programs. We talked about financials. They're doing very good in their fundraising, and again, I can give you more detailed maybe at another work session, so we don't linger here too late tonight. Northwest League, I was there, and it was very interesting. We had the county assessor there, and he gave us a report, and I can also make a copy of that and share that with you at the next work session. It's just interesting. So I'm not going to report on anything else because it's getting late and it's not super important right now. So with that.
I'll be brief also. There was a Parks Commission meeting. There's a family trust that has a 78-acre parcel. It's a 78-acre parcel. It's just west of City Hall here. They're looking at doing a cluster development where that means 50% or more has to be allocated as wetlands. There would have been wetlands there, so they would be actually they would be restoring it. That would leave 38 acres or approximately that would be developed into 10 lots that are 2 to 4 acre lots. And there's a requirement in a cluster development that the lots be 2.5 to 5 acre lots. This has been, the Parks Commission has reviewed it. Next Monday it's going to the Planning Commission. Assuming the Planning Commission approves it, then it would be presented to the City Council at our April 6th meeting for our review. And that's all I have.
We'll see more of it.
Yeah.
Okay, Pam?
Spirit of the Lakes, I will bring that up at our next work session.
Okay. Mr.
Really
Bishop?
nothing other than last Saturday was a huge success at the Moonlight Trail. The weather was
Nice
great.
weather.
I don't know who opinion we got there, but it was a huge success. I think primarily because not only was it done well, but the weather was great.
The weather was great, yeah,
Huge
absolutely.
success.
Yep. Staff's report.
I have 4 very short items to bring up. The newsletter is at the printer. We anticipate distribution to our public the week of the 23rd. Don't know exactly which day, but that's the week. Because of schedules and also my vacation a week or so ago, our labor negotiations are scheduled for this week, Wednesday, when we pick it up with our discussions with both police officers and the police supervisors. I think we're very close on both. My goal, as we sit here today before the labor negotiations, would be to try to bring something back, red line, for approval on the contracts at the April 6th meeting. Hopefully we'll meet that goal. Third item, as you mentioned a little earlier, our speaker system has been installed, so hopefully our public and especially our audience tonight didn't have any issues. We didn't have anybody say, I can't hear you, so hopefully that came through tonight. And then I'd also want to thank Claire Link. Claire has been working as our recording secretary since Terry Harstead left in late October and has done a great job. I'm only thanking her because we believe, that I know for certain, that Chris Lindquist, who's our new city clerk, will be beginning a week from today on the 23rd.
Wow.
And so she will be here, hopefully up and ready to go. She's done minutes in her past part of her career, so she'll be sitting in that chair, and we'll introduce her to, obviously, to the council that night, but she should be the one to be taking minutes at the next meeting. So again, thanks to Claire.
So thank you,
Thank
Claire.
you.
Thank you, Claire.
You will be on call in case she's sick.
A sub, right?
That's all I have.
All right. Any other staff updates? Okay, with that,
Speaking, one quick comment,
Yeah.
speaking of our previous clerk, I mean, when it came up about the email, the missing email list and stuff, I'm assuming there's a way we can contact her, we don't know where she works.
We
to
can
say,
find it, but
you know, where it is. It would save, I think, staff a lot of time trying to put another list together.
Yeah, we'll try, but I think our best bet is just to say, as I think one of our residents pointed out, here, click here if you want to be included on the list. And why she was doing it, I have no idea. That's really not part of her duties. I think it's probably going to fall to Dawn, since she deals with utility billing. I think we'll let her maintain the list going forward and not the city clerk, new city clerk. So
I just want to make
I
sure.
don't know how she was doing it.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
that we get this information
Oh, yeah.
out to everyone.
Yeah.
It's, you know, if it's just a matter of making a phone call and say, you know where that list
Sure.
is, da-da-da-da, you know.
We had one of our participants tonight, Miss Crystal, you know, she sent me a bunch of emails, and I got a lot of emails already in that list, so my assumption is those are her neighbors, friends, and they live in the Hunter's Crest area, so I think we just don't know who they are.
Mhm.
If it's not your name, we have no idea who it is, so that's kind of why we're looking, we're trying to
Right.
keep track and have a database versus just an email address.
And at a minimal, there's the association president or
Right.
lead that, you know,
He's on
if
the
he's
list.
contacted.
I have his
Roger.
information.
And he's on that list, so.
Oh, okay.
So I
Very
already
All
got
right,
his email.
don't lose
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Beth, and make sure,
Got it.
I just phone.
because then that helps, and he'll just send out
Yep,
and we have other
we have other resources.
other
We'll
homeowners'
see if we can
information, so,
recreate a kind
all
of a
right.
master list as we
Yeah.
go here.
And we'll be working on that communication part, so. All right, with that, any other comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. A long meeting.
I'm starting to roll my shoes.
Yeah.